I've watched dozens of girly movies over the last several months. I'm enjoying them immensely, and I plan to watch dozens more, but I'm pausing in the middle to discuss one that stands out to me not only as my favorite in the genre, but as multiple tiers ahead of its closest competitor, 2006's Aquamarine. I feel fully confident calling it a brilliant film, and I believe an aspiring writer or director of any genre could learn a lot by studying it. Make no mistake, this is purely a girly movie, and with all of the genre conventions. There's a slow-motion hot boy, the mean hot girls, the breakup and reconciliation of the best friends, the impassioned speech,
Let me tell you something.
and even the trying on clothes montage. Really all it's missing is the scene where our hero decides what cafeteria table to sit at. Unlike some other girly films, Aquamarine never steps outside of the genre. It's not a self-aware spoof like Mean Girls.
No, it's not really required of you to make a speech.
It doesn't branch into action like Barely Lethal. It's just a girly movie, and yet it does far more within those boundaries than anything I've seen. I'll start with its tone. More than any movie I can think of in any genre, Aquamarine is just pure fun. Once it gets going, it is non-stop bliss until the credits roll. A lot of this comes from the characters, who are all downright manic for the entire film.
I could just do this all day.
They do not feel any emotion as a 7 out of 10. Everything is life or death,
Aqua, you can't do this.
and watching them freak out over every minor thing puts the audience in that same headspace. When they are happy, they are unable to contain it.
You can help you, we can help you. Yes, 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 yes.
When the slightest thing goes wrong, they act as if the world is ending.
No!
And most importantly, they recover immediately. They are back to this delirious giddiness moments later. Problems in this movie happen, but they are all overcome immediately and effortlessly. When the villain Cecilia successfully breaks off Aqua's date by lying to Raymond,
Well, that was before I found out that she has a boyfriend.
it takes one sentence to set things right again.
Aqua doesn't have a boyfriend.
Or later on, look how easily they stop Cecilia from interfering with a date as it happens.
Back off! Don't make a bigger fool of yourself than you already have.
Same thing, one single sentence. And for some reason it works. Everything works out for our three heroes, even when it logically shouldn't. They completely botch the flirting advice they read in magazines.
Casually walked past him, laughing. Good idea.
Yet note that they're still successful. We don't have to watch them slowly learn and improve until they can finally win over Raymond in the end. They get it on their first try. They have all the impish fun that comes from failing, but none of its consequences. What amazes me about this movie is how the characters seem to know and expect that. They're placed in an absurd world, yet they never truly question it.
Wait, what if she's like bad or something? Why would she be bad?
Let's think about the film's most basic premise. Haley doesn't want to move away from her friend, so her solution is to make a wish, by helping a mermaid, by proving that love exists. Every part of that is insane, right? And yet the closest they ever come to expressing doubt is this one brief moment.
Claire? Do you think he'll fall in actual love with her in 2 days?
A doubt that lingered for about 5 seconds before they're back to pursuing this ridiculous plan with their fullest devotion.
Haley,
What?
we completely forgot something. What's Aqua gonna wear to the last splash?
Should they trust this strange creature? Why not? Should they store her in a water tower, as in inside the water that flows through the town's faucets? Given that Aqua eats and drinks and therefore has to expel all of that? Who cares? Should they really bribe a band to play Ray's favorite song just to make Aqua's date slightly better? Who cares? They just know it will all work out. And they're right. Having everything be so effortless wouldn't work in most movies. Imagine how boring any action or horror movie would be if the problems were solved so easily. But in something like Aquamarine, it allows us to keep things light and fun at all times, even when they probably shouldn't be. It's a tone that very few films try for and far fewer achieve. Even most lighthearted comedies include a 10-minute somber interlude at some point. But this movie's grief never lasts more than one half of one scene. The fun mood is also helped by the surprisingly brisk pacing. Most of these movies have filler or tangents or start to feel repetitive or predictable. Aquamarine constantly moves forward. Every scene is compact, and most serve more than one purpose. Watch how this scene crams 2 moments into one. Haley rides the dolphins to the buoy to get some starfish earrings, don't ask, but instead of following her to the buoy, the camera stays behind, on the pier, so Claire and Aqua can have a heart-to-heart. A lesser screenwriter would have made this two separate scenes, drawing each one out with unnecessary details like how Haley finds the starfish once she reaches the buoy, and then how she travels back to the pier, maybe even getting into some false danger along the way, but I don't want to see all of that, and this movie understands that better than most. This film is also incredibly skilled at saving screen time by skipping scenes altogether and simply implying them. Consider just how much happens in the last line of this exchange when the mean girl gets in trouble with her father.
And while you're walking to school every day, you can try and figure out why it is you need so much attention.
If that didn't impress you, consider that that's the first and only time we see these two interact. That one sentence has us imagine their entire history together, with her repeatedly annoying him by behaving like this. Most movies would have shown us a few glimpses into that, ultimately boring us by explaining something we don't need to have explained. Instead, Aquamarine trusts our intelligence, and values our time, and just nimbly skips past it. Implying so much backstory so efficiently is a phenomenal writing technique, and is very difficult to do this well. Aquamarine also knows when it's the right time to slow things down slightly, and give us more than we need. There are several moments of quiet beauty, like Aqua reminiscing about her date, leisurely swimming around while humming the song they danced to earlier. It's magical, and one of my favorite moments in the film, despite containing essentially no plot. I also want to look at how this film uses tags, those extra bits tacked on to the end of something that could have stood alone. Let's watch this scene when the mean girls try to intimidate our dauntless mermaid heroine.
I've got some advice for you two. Put on a dry shirt.
The exchange could have ended with the water spit. It's a perfectly serviceable joke and probably what most viewers are expecting. Instead, the scene goes one line further with a tag that's witty and hilarious and unexpected. Adding tags is dangerous territory because it can easily backfire and ruin the joke, if not the entire scene, but this film manages to find that perfect rhythm and balance. Jokes are often expanded, but never worn out. It even excels at non-comedic tags. Watch what happens at the end of this date, which Aqua has to rush through so she can get home before the sun sets.
Tomorrow you can tell me. Come to the pier at 9 o'clock.
I'll tell you what.
You can tell me how that makes you feel.
Right? Same thing. If she had run off after the kiss, it would have been an acceptably romantic moment. But she adds this extra line which elevates the scene from acceptable to outstanding. Speaking of which, let's look at the opposite. Let's look at how Aquamarine knows when to end things earlier than it needs to. Here's a fun exchange where Haley convinces Claire to sneak out with her to the mall.
Do you know how much trouble we'll be in?
Come on, Clarity Cat.
Look at the way we just jump out of that scene. We're expecting Claire to put up more of a fight, or at least react to what Haley just said. But the film doesn't waste our time. We know where the conversation is going, so we can just skip ahead. Very few movies have editing this effective. And I know that Aquamarine didn't invent the smash cut, but I'm impressed at how well it employs it.
Come on, Clarity Cat.
Even if we're going to smash cut out of the scene, that's not the obvious way to do it. The lesser skilled director would have cut away after Claire says something like, "No way will I ever go to the mall," and then we cut to her at the mall. But the thing is, that gag hasn't been funny since the 80s, and this director knows that. And remember, this is a movie for girls. Most girly movies do not avoid cliches like that. If anything, they embrace cliche, figuring their audience is too young to know or care about recycled jokes. Aquamarine, though, has this strangely high respect for its audience. But there's even more to it than that. This edit is about more than just resisting cliche, it changes the thrust of the whole scene. If the final note is Claire refusing, then the joke becomes look at how easy it is to manipulate Claire, this poor victim. Instead, cutting away on Haley's line, the joke is look at how charming and winsome Haley is. It's much more lighthearted and adds so much to the spirit of this film. There is a different but equally great use of the smash cut later. Aqua is confused to experience crying for the first time, and asks Haley what tears are.
This is crazy. Next you're gonna tell me water shoots out of your nose when you're happy. Only occasionally.
This is perhaps the most ambiguous moment in the film. What does Haley even mean? I think it's a joke, but not the one you'd expect. The obvious wording would be, yeah, all the time. Then it's clearly absurdist humor, with Haley just being silly. But instead she says only occasionally.
Only occasionally.
This makes me wonder, is she joking? Does she want Aqua to believe her? Is she referring to something specific? I don't know, and what sells this moment is the edit. We never get to see Aqua's reaction, so we have no idea how she took it, or how Haley wanted her to take it, or what Haley even meant. We're left with this puzzle to consider. It's brilliant. I do have one complaint about the film's editing. Let me show you a joke Aqua makes, but with one slight change I've made.
Who needs Raymond? I found 2 new men to love. Their names are Ben and Jerry.
It's a simple joke, and one I may have even heard in a 90s sitcom, but it works, right? However, that's not what happens in the original film. The film shows us the Ben and Jerry's label earlier than I did. With their edit, when Aqua says 2 men, we've already seen the label, and we immediately say Ben and Jerry in our heads before he says it out loud. Therefore, the punchline falls short because we've already figured it out. If you wanted to defend the film's choice, I guess you could say the editing gives us the opportunity to feel smart, because we can figure out something before it happens. I don't know. Either way, all that really hangs in the balance is one single throwaway joke, so it's not a huge issue. And if my only complaint about the movie spans half a second, I can live with that. Back to praising the film. I want to talk about what this film does with the concept of fantasy. We do have a mermaid protagonist, so of course it's a fantasy film, but think about how thoroughly the fantasy extends. It's not only riding on dolphins and having nail polish to change its colors with your moods, and it's not only using your slumber party to control the supernatural. There's also simpler, more real-world fantasies, like just getting to befriend the cooler older girl, or being opposed by an intimidatingly beautiful girl, and defeating her, once again without consequence. For my own tastes, part of the fantasy is just getting to live in this world that's almost entirely women. The 3 protagonists and the 3 antagonists are all women. We never get to see the protagonists' fathers, except through brief photographs or a garbled voiceover.
Hello? Dad?
There's only one male love interest, not a triangle, not a reverse harem, just one. No character in the film even has a boyfriend. The only men besides Raymond are a few extras and this one maintenance guy. This is a type of space very few films try to create, including most girly films even. A lot of them are quick to pack their movie with hot boys instead of focusing on just one. And in this weird pattern I don't even understand the purpose of, a surprising number of these films have a protagonist who lives only with her father and older brother, not a mother or any sisters. Speaking of the girls in this movie, I like how realistic they feel. Part of this comes simply from how they dress. Most girly movie casts dress like they're headed to the prom, which is a look and it has its fans, but to me feels artificial and removes us from the world we're being shown. Haley and Claire dress like people you might actually see at a real-life school. Even after the mandatory makeover scene, it's not exaggerated or unbelievable. This film's handling of romance also feels surprisingly realistic for how 14-year-olds truly think. Most of these movies have our tween heroine lusting after some boy and then happily kissing him at the end. Or maybe just agreeing to be with him, implying a kiss later on. But in Aquamarine, and in real life, the 14-year-old's crush is purely speculative. They find it fun to talk and think about Raymond, but they don't actually want to be with him, whether they admit it or not. Consider how quickly the 2 of them abandon their pursuit, and instead help somebody else date him. Somebody older than themselves, by the way. Honestly, it all feels more real than those movies without mermaids. Part of the reason this film portrays women so well is that it was made by women. Again, this is less common than you might expect. Looking at credits for various girly films, you'll notice this pattern that nearly all of them are written by women, but are directed by men, and produced by men, and edited by men. Aquamarine has women in all of those roles, and several others as well. I don't know why it's so rare, and I wish it wasn't, but it is. Back to the topic of romance, I'm not the first person to notice this, but this film is extremely gay, and I love it. It's not only that Haley dresses like a tomboy.
Does she have something against girls' clothes?
It's not only that the girls are mesmerized by the beautiful lady mermaid, or that they can't resist peeking at her human form's butt. Or that Haley dyes blue strands in her hair to look like Aqua's. Or that they say lines like this.
I wish I could hide out here with you.
Or that when they first see her tail, they ask if they can touch it, and then say it feels slimy.
Not slimy!
Thank you.
No, it's more than that. I'm about to spoil a large chunk of the ending, so fast forward 40 seconds if you want to avoid that. Aqua's mission is to prove that true love exists, which she does with the love that Claire and Haley have for each other and the love they have for her. And I'm not interpreting subtext there, I'm repeating what they directly say.
There's no wish. What?
is what I would do for her, and I know she'd do it for me, and just because we love you, Aqua.
Don't you see? You just proved to him that love exists.
It's perhaps worth pointing out that this brilliant flourish was something the director had to fight for and the studio tried to talk her out of. And yes, every relationship we directly see in the movie is heterosexual, but the movie at least acknowledges gayness, which is more than a lot of gay subtext films do.
No, Raymond's way too popular. You should pick someone else.
I mean, all the girls are after him. Even a few boys.
Right.
To close, let's study my favorite scene in the film, the fight between Haley and Claire. It's dramatically astounding, and it showcases quite a lot of those traits I've been discussing. On the surface, it's much the same as all those other fight scenes in all those other girly movies. It starts out small, then it gets bigger, until one girl says something too harsh, leaving the other in stunned silence, and one of them storms out of the room. However, it has some subtle embellishments I left out just now, ones that elevate the scene to a whole other level. Let's watch.
Oh? So you're the one who's lived here your whole life? How do you figure that I'm your only friend? Huh?
WQDA, the Coast Breaking News Channel. Going live to Storm Banks.
Now, I won't lie. Haley's first sentence is awkwardly worded, and I don't believe any actor alive could make it sound good.
So you're the one who's lived here your whole life?
But the line after it is so blistering that it doesn't even matter. When Haley asks, "Why am I your only friend?" it's a savage insult, yes, but it's more than that. It's also a huge revelation to the audience. This whole film, until this moment, Haley being Claire's only friend has never been mentioned or even implied. They're obviously best friends, but only friends? When she says it here, we're not only reeling from its cruelty, but from how eye-opening it is. We immediately realize so much about both of these characters, present and past. Remember what I said earlier about skipping scenes and using implied backstory? This is a great example of that. I also have to talk about what happens directly afterward, which might be the most powerful syllable in cinema history.
How do you figure that I'm your only friend? Huh?
This is another example of the film going farther than it has to, and blowing us away when it does. Claire concedes the fight, and Haley doesn't notice. She's too full of adrenaline. She keeps attacking. It's like watching a boxer knock somebody out, and then punch them again after they land. It's so over the top, Claire has nothing to do but burst into tears, which of course she does. Only now does Haley finally give up, despite clearly wanting more. It's brutal. Compare this with a more typical fight scene, which I'll show you now.
When you walk around screaming, "Screw the world!" Because that's easier than feeling something.
Right? Same basic ending, but without those embellishments, and way less impactful. It's longer and more drawn out, but it lacks the sheer viciousness of Aquamarine's fight scene. And it doesn't make you rethink any earlier parts of the film. This is nothing against Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, a film I also enjoy. I only use it to help illustrate why Aquamarine stands out so much from the crowd. Subtle touches like these are the difference between goodness and greatness. And I'm not even done talking about the scene yet. Let's watch what happens after Haley slams the door. This is a huge crossroads, where the script can go one of two basic ways. The obvious way, and what almost every movie would do, girly or otherwise, would be to linger on this grief it just created. Haley and Claire are no longer friends, and Haley has to slowly win back Claire's trust over the next 20 minutes or so until they finally reunite, probably at the film's climactic scene, maybe a school dance or something. We've seen it 100 times. But I said earlier how this film stays upbeat at all times and never dwells on unpleasantries. We're about to get the ultimate example of that. Watch how quickly and how skillfully this movie signals to the audience that these two are going to stay friends.
From Baybridge Water Tower, where an unidentified girl has been trapped. Firefighters are racing against time to rescue this
Haley,
girl
wait!
from a watery grave.
Haley, wait!
It's about 11 seconds after the biggest fight of either character's life, and we know that they're about to reconcile. Quickly, off-screen, and completely. And we're right, they do. The next time we see them, they're best friends as if the fight never happened. A lot of people might dislike that decision. They would say the audience needs time to grieve this devastating fight. They would say they want to watch Haley slowly redeem herself. Perhaps they would even accuse Aquamarine of lacking the emotional depth of more somber movies. To them I ask, Does every movie need to have sad interludes? Can movies never just be consistently happy? Don't you ever get tired of the same formula over and over again? And to the film's emotional depth, I can only say that I felt more anguish during that brief fight, and every time I've thought back on it, than most half-hour arguments ever get out of me. I could go on as there's tons more to praise about this movie, but I'll end it here. Thank you for watching, go buy the Blu-ray, and rate this movie on IMDb.